Do you ever get tired of the conservative movements, the MAGA movements, the extreme right movements, all these movements out there saying some of the most hateful and disgusting things, both in real life and online, where their general and extensive stupidity seems to come from? Well, that means that you and I are going to have to dive deep into a little bit of a history lesson. You see, a long time ago, a little organization called the Daughters of the Confederacy, we now know them as Moms for Liberty, started a campaign after the Reconstruction era post-Civil War to begin to infiltrate our educational systems, our forms of government, all the different functional parts of society, religious organizations, basically any social outreach organization, and start essentially seeding this idea that the Confederacy was in the right, that the things that they wanted to achieve were actually good, and that the Confederacy in and of itself did no wrong. They just wanted states' rights. They just wanted, freedom. And they tried to implement that, and they actually started changing our nation's educational system, even so much as being the approving authority for what books are and are not allowed to be taught in school. This infiltration was highly effective. It actually, like a cancer, infected our school systems and our education, so much so that even today, we are seeing students go through Daughters of the Confederacy approved educational curriculum and programs that soften the idea of what the Confederacy did and what they stood for and make it sound like the Confederacy really wasn't that evil. This is why you see a lot of people on the right still wanting to fly Confederate flags and maintain Confederate monuments. And if you go look in any southern state that has a Confederate monument outside of a courthouse or their state capitol building, you will most likely see a small inscription on the bottom of that monument that says paid for by the Daughters of the Confederacy. Think of the Daughters of the Confederacy like the social outreach program for the fascist, conservative, ultra-right. Their job was to win the hearts and minds and alter the course of history, and they were very, very successful. This is why you see so many of these people still believe that the Confederacy was started for states' rights and not slavery. Okay, so we covered the first part. Now we need to get into the second part, and that is the biggest hang-up I see, especially from those on the right, and don't get me wrong, on the left it seems to be the same way too, is this hang up on the words Republican and Democrat. Republican and Democrat are words that describe a political party. They are literally just names for a political party. It does not describe an ideology. It does not describe a political movement. It is literally just a name given to a group of people who wanted to run for office in this country. Now, if we look at the Republicans pre-Civil War and during the Civil War, and honestly post-Civil War for a little while, they were a very leftist, liberal movement. They were open-minded, free-thinking, liberty-loving people who believed that all human beings were created equal. And therefore, all human beings, regardless of their color or their sex or identity or whatever the case might be, or even their national origin, deserved equality and equity and inclusion. This is a very liberal set. So the Republican Party in the 1860s, 70s, and 90s was a liberal party, a leftist party. The Dixiecrats, or as we know them as the Democrats back then, were a conservative, ultra-conservative, agrarian political movement. They used religion to force their will onto anybody they deemed lesser than themselves. The Democratic Party was the party of right-wing fascism that led to the Confederacy. So let's do a quick recap. Liberalism and leftism, these, or even socialism, these are political ideologies. These are political movements. These are the ideas that go behind how a political movement is going to manifest itself in whatever group of people it exists in. Fascism, conservatism, any of that stuff, Confederacy, these are political ideologies on the other side of the spectrum. These are the movements that those people would like to push in their direction to infiltrate whatever group of people they might be in. Republican and Democrat are just names of political parties. That's it. Do not allow people to conflate those two things, because that's where a lot of this anger and confusion, especially on the right, seems to be coming from. Conservatism and all of its little subsidiaries has for the longest time, for as long as anyone can possibly remember, always required the poor, the uneducated, and the dim-witted to be successful. That has been one thing that has permeated the South in the United States since this country's inception. This is why the Dixiecrats, an ultra-conservative movement, relied heavily on the poor and the uneducated and anybody they deemed lesser than themselves to advance the wealthy elite who controlled the conservative movements, typically in the churches and the major businesses, especially agricultural and farming back then. This is how they got their power. That never changed. Shortly after the Nixon administration, the Republican Party was staggering and suffering because of the embarrassment of the Nixon administration and everything that happened with Vietnam. They started losing voters. They started having problems. The Democratic Party had become quite liberal and leftist in their own ideologies and were gaining a lot of voters because of the massive shift in their political ideologies. So they seized the moment after the Nixon administration and basically went to bed with the Southern Dixiecrats. The Southern Dixiecrats never changed their political ideology. They are the same today as they were 100 years ago. They are still conservative, they are still ultra-religious, they are still racists, and they are still bigots. That's never changed. The only thing that changed was the name of the political party. The movement, the ideology, has always been the same. The South has always had a big problem with its racism and its bigotry. It still does, probably going to for the foreseeable future. All they did was change their name. They're not the Democrats anymore, now they're Republicans. This is why when you go to MAGA rallies, you see Confederate flags, Nazi flags, racist flags, all kinds of stuff. You don't see that at a Democratic convention or a Democratic rally. You see that at conservative rallies. So I hope this clears things up. If you enjoyed my video, please do all the things. Please engage. See you soon.